By the end of today's video, you're going to be able to use well-organized steps when teaching reading comprehension. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Before we get into the details of today's video, please hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. And don't forget to turn the notification bell on so you can be notified every time I post a new video. Now, thanks for your support. Let's begin. Well, first off, reading aloud is not included in a reading comprehension lesson. Why? Simply, no point choosing random students to read aloud in a comprehension lesson. Instead, the activities of a reading comprehension lesson should go over 3 main stages as follows. Stage number 1 is the lead-in activities or the introductory activities. Well, stage number 2 is the main activities or the comprehension activities. And last but not least, the post-task activities, the lead-in activities or the introductory activities. At this stage, we focus on 2 things. Well, introducing the topic of the text and pre-teaching vocabulary. Well, the first part is to introduce the topic of the text. Today, I have 5 options for you to introduce the topic of the text. Well, option number 1 is an open-ended question. How about you put an open-ended question on the board and start a class discussion? For example, if the text is about success, what's one tip for someone looking for success? Go ahead. Your students are involved and engaged in such open-ended questions because all the possible answers are right. Well, option number 2. Some pictures. Choose a few pictures related to the topic and again, start off a class discussion. Let your students communicate their ideas, their thoughts with each other. Option number 3 is a short video clip. Show your students a short clip about the topic of the text or even an idea of the text. And again, start off a class discussion. Or if you want to have like group work, it's up to you. It's up to the lesson plan you have. Option number 4 is your students' imagination. It looks quite weird, but it might work. Well, now let's close our eyes and travel to a planet called Success Planet, where everyone is successful and everything is just perfect, just right. What do you think their daily life looks like? Option number 5 is so common, which is brainstorming. Try to brainstorm your students' thoughts or ideas about the topic of the text or what they predict in the text. Well, these are the 5 options I have for you today. Well, try to have variety in your lessons so that you don't get a repetitive, boring reading comprehension lesson. Well, the other part of this stage is, we're still at the beginning of the lesson, which is the lead-in stage. The other part is pre-teaching vocabulary. Yes, teach the vocabulary of the lesson before students read the text. Before, not after or not while. Just before. Pre-teaching vocabulary happens at the beginning or at the first stage. Now, your students are ready to read the text. So let's move on to the next stage, which is the main activities or the comprehension activities. The purpose of this stage is to focus on the comprehension of the text. Read the text and understand it. Well, reading aloud? X. Then what? How about you break up the text into like 2 parts? So you have part 1 and part 2 of the text. And you put your class into 2 groups or according to the length of the text and the circumstances of the classroom. So I said just 2 parts and 2 groups. Well, so I have here 2 groups. Group A and Group B. Well, so Group A will read part 1 and Group B will read part 2. Then each group will work on only one part of the text and try to list all the possible questions to ask the other group to build up comprehension, to understand the other part of the text. So Group A will ask Group B about part 2. Well, and Group B will ask Group A all the questions to understand part 1. So they complete each other. Well, sorry. By the way, this is called Jigsaw Reading. Such an excellent way for students to develop their communicative skills and their cooperative learning strategies as they work together. Your students are highly involved and interested. Well, now your students or your class have read the text. Let's move to the questions in the course book. You know that each question requires one reading subskill. So briefly, reading subskills are 7. Scanning, 7 like this, okay? Scanning, skimming, reading for detail, inferring, predicting, deducing meaning from the context, and understanding the text structure. By the way, being knowledgeable about these skills will make the job a lot easier to help your students to find out the correct answer without having to read the whole text again every time they answer a question. Well, at this stage, or at this step, try not to match the questions to its parts, i.e., the answer of question A or the answer of question 1 is in part 1, which belongs to group A. So please ask one of group B to answer that question. Vice versa. If the answer of question 4 in part 2, which belongs to group B, so please ask one of group A to answer that question, and so on until you finish up all the questions in the course book. Well, your students have read the text and answered the questions. Now let's move on to the next stage, or to the last one, which is post-task activities. Well, the purpose of this stage is your students link between what happened in today's lesson and their own lives, or between the topic of the text and their own lives, their own experiences. Try to let your students think out of the box. Try to let your students show the real influence of the text on their lives. Encourage them to make suggestions, to give opinions, to relate themselves to the topic. P.S. Stress on the vocabulary they've just learned. Encourage your students to use the vocabulary when rephrasing or when talking about the same thing. It's really useful for your students to reflect using the new vocabulary. That's it from me today. I appreciate your support. Please share today's video with other teachers who might find this guide helpful. And I'll see you in a new video. Bye-bye.